It's well after midnight on Allison Road, and neither man in this car is talking. That's the thing Lockie will remember most clearly years later. Not the engine light, not the GPS. It's the silence that fell over the car somewhere around the dip. He and his mate had been yakking the whole drive, the way you do when you're a bit excited. You've just picked up a new car, and you're pleased with yourself, and the night's going great. And then, for no particular reason, without either of them making a conscious decision to stop, they did stop talking. The road that they're on runs through the heart of North Motton, a rural pocket of Tasmania's northwest coast, about 7 kilometres inland from Ulverston. During the day it's gentle enough country, rolling farmland, paddocks that dissolve into scrubby ridgelines. The kind of landscape that makes Tasmania look like the edge of the world in the most beautiful way. But at this hour, with the headlights punching a narrow tunnel through absolute darkness and nothing on either side except rickety old farm fencing and dark paddocks, it feels like a road that has no intention of ending. Their silence stretches on. In fact, in that very moment, it's quiet enough in the car that they don't just see the engine light blinking on, they hear it as well. Lockie looks down at it and his mate does too, and neither of them says anything for a moment. Lockie doesn't know what to say. He knows what must be going through his mate's head. He's just splashed all the money he had on this car, and first drive the engine lights come on. Lockie hopes for his mate's sake that it's just faulty wiring, something the car does from time to time, that he hasn't wasted all his money on a complete lemon. His mate slows down, trying to hear or smell something wrong with the vehicle. And then the GPS goes too. Not a loss of signal exactly. More like it completely forgets where it is. The screen showed a road, but now nothing, just green paddocks. They're somewhere that the technology has simply stopped accounting for. That isn't completely unusual out here. Roads between little farming towns in the northwest coast of Tasmania sometimes simply aren't on GPS maps. They don't panic, but it is strange that these two things have both happened within about a minute of each other. What happens next, though, has no clear answer. On a road with almost no turns, they seem to somehow take a wrong one, and then another. The fences and the scrub line both sides of the road. They seem to narrow. The headlights catch nothing useful. They do a U-ey, circle back, but the road they came in on isn't the way they left it. It doesn't feel like it anyway. The engine light is still on, steady and flat, not blinking, just there, and the GPS screen is giving them nothing. The car seems to be travelling okay though. There's nothing noticeably wrong with it. It's the location they're in now that causes the greatest concern. They're still not speaking. Silence. They don't put the radio on, they just keep driving, trying to find a way out of there. It takes a while, 5, maybe 10 minutes, before they find their way onto a major road. And when they do, the check engine light just flicks off. As quickly as it came on, it just stops, and the GPS picks them up immediately. Their position precise and certain, and the route home clicks back in, obvious and close. Lockie never drives Allison Road again after dark. He doesn't explain to people why exactly, because the story sounds slightly wrong when you try to tell it in daylight. In fact, it doesn't even sound that scary. It doesn't come close to conveying the fright that went through him. The silence in that car. The inexplicable loss of all direction. He's not the first person to feel strange on this road, and he certainly won't be the last. G'day, welcome back to Struth, the podcast where we explore Australia's most perplexing mysteries. And for today's episode, one a bit closer to home for me here in the northwest of Tasmania. I can't believe it's taken me 51 episodes to chuck in a spooky Tassie tale. You know, one of the hardest things about this show is trying to find the balance. I know that some of you really love the true crime stuff, and others are far more into the paranormal, the spooky, the tales that you don't really like listening to when you're driving along a lonesome country road by yourself at night. Well, this one is both. The perfect tale to celebrate midwinter here in Tasmania. Also a bit of a content warning. As per usual, I'm not going to go into the gory details, I don't think there's any point, but we do talk about the death of a young girl. February 1921. North Motton is a close-knit farming community in Tasmania's northwest, the sort of place where families have worked the same paddocks for generations, and where strangers are noticed, remembered, and talked about. The road to the nearby village runs through a landscape of cleared farmland, creek crossings, patches of dense scrub, and the massive remnants of old-growth logging, enormous eucalypt and pine stumps scattered through the trees like the ruins of something ancient. Chrissie Venn is 13 years old. Her full name is Christine, but nobody calls her that. She lives with her mother, Eva May Dawes, on Allison Road, about 3 miles past North Motton and 7 miles inland from Ulverston. It's a modest life. Chrissie is described by those who knew her as a strong girl, born and bred on the farm, not scared of a bit of hard work. She walks this road regularly, running errands, collecting groceries and post from the village on her own. It's a trip she knows like the back of her hand. On the afternoon of Saturday the 26th of February, Eva sends Chrissie into North Motton for the groceries, meat and a trip to the post office. She hands her daughter 9 shillings and 7pence in change and a basket, and Chrissie leaves home at about 5 in the afternoon. The walk typically takes an hour and 3/4 each way. So if she's quick enough, late February, she'll be home just after dark. But she doesn't come home. And by sunset, Eva is getting worried. She walks out along the road a little way, calling out, looking. She sees nothing. Returns home. She sends word for help, and eventually police from Ulverston are contacted. But it's past dark now, and whatever search takes place that evening is limited, uncertain, and yields nothing. On the Sunday, a wider search begins, and this leads into Monday, and then Tuesday. In fact, for 9 days, more than 100 people move through paddocks and scrub along creek banks. Some of them are neighbours. Some of them are strangers who've come to help. George William King, a tall, powerfully built man of 36, who owns farm property just down the road from the Venns, joins the search on both Monday and Tuesday. He keeps to the lower side of the Allison Road, searching with different groups each day. And he's already drawing attention, bordering on suspicion from the police. On Tuesday the 1st of March at 11:30 in the morning, a searcher near a deep ravine half a mile from Chrissie's home has the idea to look inside one of the enormous hollow stumps that dot the area. The stump he finds is extraordinary in scale, 33 feet around at the base, 9 feet high on the upper side, with a hollow only 16 inches in diameter. It's the charred remains of what was once a massive tree. And inside that stump, they find the remains of Chrissie Venn. She's been pushed down headfirst into the narrow hollow. Her basket is at the bottom, along with her handkerchief, the bottle that was in the basket, a cap, and her underclothing. The small amount of money that her mother had given her is gone. The cause of death, as determined by Dr. Frederick Ferris, the local Ulverston physician who conducts the post-mortem, is asphyxiation. A portion of her own white dress with a brooch still attached has been forced into her throat, and a length of hay baling wire from a nearby gate is twisted around her neck, though it is believed that this was applied after death to help move the body. Evidence of a struggle is found in the scrub about 12 yards from the stump, a quantity of blood and disturbed ground where the attack appears to have taken place. Chrissie Venn had not gone quietly. This small, close-knit farming community, as you could imagine, is devastated. It is also very quickly absolutely furious, and all of that fury begins to point in one direction. George William King is not a local man, and that matters in a place like North Motton. He's a newcomer to the area, a farmer who's taken up land on the Allison Road within the last few years. And he's a big fella, 6'4", solidly built, powerfully framed. Most importantly though, he has very clear scratches on his face and on the back of his right hand. He has a story for those scratches though. In fact, he has several. Initially, he tells his wife Ruby that the marks on his face are from skylarking with one of his kids. He and his daughter are just mucking around, and her hand accidentally catches his cheek, scratching his face. He tells police that the cuts on his right hand were sustained during the search for Chrissie's body when he was scrambling through the scrub. But these explanations begin to unravel almost as quickly as they're offered. His neighbour, John Herbs, has seen the scratches on King's hand on the Sunday before the search where King claims to have acquired them. And the medical evidence will suggest that injuries are consistent with fingernails rather than bracken. King's alibi is even more troubling. He claims he was working in Herb's potato paddock during the afternoon, that he then came home at around 4 o'clock, penned his sow, had a cup of tea with Ruby, and never left again until he went across to a neighbour's property to separate milk at 8 in the evening. But when police trace the movements of everyone else on the road that afternoon, the picture they piece together doesn't quite fit. A 17-year-old named Robert Mackay, who lives further along the road past the Venn home, is heading back that way at around 5. He sees Chrissie walking out of her own front door, basket in hand, setting off on her errand. And she calls out to him, "Hello, Robert." This is the last confirmed sighting of Chrissie Venn alive. As Mackay carries on home, he passes Charles Purton on the road. He's riding a horse in the direction of North Motton, the same direction toward the ravine where Chrissie's body will later be found. Purton, who has been ploughing nearby with his brother, also says he saw the girl out on the road that afternoon. A short while later, with Chrissie now well down that road and into that stretch of scrub, the Herbs boys, working in the fields, hear a single scream rise from the valley below. They wait for another, but none comes, and they decide not to investigate. And here is where King's account begins to come apart. He's told police he was home from 4 and never left again until 8, but the sow he says he penned at 4 is seen out on the road, near the waterfall, sometime after 5. The grocer, Mr. Fogg, calls at the King house that afternoon as well and finds nobody home at all. The one stretch of the day King insists he spent quietly indoors having tea with Ruby is the very window in which a girl was screaming in the valley below. The pig he said was penned is loose on the road, and his front door went unanswered. So at the critical hour, A neutral witness places Chrissie alive and walking out to run an errand and puts Charles Purton on horseback near the spot where she will die. King, meanwhile, has given an account of his afternoon that the rest of the road quietly contradicts. That, more than any single piece of physical evidence, is what will harden the suspicion against him. It's not what he was seen doing, but the gap between his story and the recollections of everyone else on the road that day that condemns King in the eyes of those around him. He's arrested on a charge of willful murder. An anonymous letter is also found at King's home which reads, "Take care. I saw you murder Chrissie Venn, and if you don't confess, I'm going to tell the police." Inside, there was a crude drawing of a man hanging from a gallows. The detectives believe the letter was written by a woman, but its author to this day has never been identified. By the time George William King goes to trial, the feeling against him in the northwest of Tasmania is so fierce, so settled, that the hearing has to be moved from Launceston to Hobart. The community has already convicted him. Moving the trial to the capital is an attempt to find 12 people who can hear the evidence without having already decided what it meant. The trial begins on the 14th of August 1921 and runs for 10 days. The trial itself stops being about George King. At least from the newspaper's perspective, in many ways it's about a country doctor up against a city surgeon. Dr. Frederick Ferris is the general practitioner from Ulverston who performed the post-mortem examination on Chrissie Venn. He is competent, broadly experienced in the way that rural doctors must be, accustomed to doing everything for himself with whatever is at hand. He is the prosecution's medical witness. He's examined the body, formed his conclusions, and committed them in writing. And he is certain of his findings. Dr. Victor Ratton, however, is something else entirely. Ratton is a Hobart surgeon, and in 1921 he is as close to a celebrity as the medical profession produces in Tasmania. He's charismatic, commanding, the kind of man who takes up more than his proportional share of a room. His reputation in the operating theatre has made him something approaching a folk hero, the brilliant city doctor who has saved lives that lesser men would have lost. When Victor Ratton walks into a courtroom, people look at him the way they might look at a barrister with a perfect record. They assume, before he has said a word, that he is right, that he is going to win. And Victor Ratton has been engaged by the defence. One more thing about Victor Ratton that is worth pointing out. Although it won't become publicly known until some years after this trial, his medical diploma, the credential that underpins his entire reputation, is completely fraudulent. The qualifications he's built his career upon are not real. But in August 1921, in a Hobart courtroom, all the spectators, the jurors and the newspaper reporters see is a brilliant surgeon against a country GP, and the gap that they see between them. And it's that gap that Albert Ogilvie intends to leverage. Ogilvie is the defence barrister, a rising young Hobart lawyer who will later become Premier of the state. He's smart, strategic, and he understands that the prosecution's case is built almost entirely on circumstantial evidence. King's location near the scene, the inconsistencies in his statements, the scratches on his face and hand, and the medical opinion of Dr. Ferris that those scratches were inflicted by human fingernails, consistent with the victim fighting back. There is, however, no physical evidence directly linking King to Chrissie Venn. No blood on his clothing, no weapon, nothing taken from the scene found in his possession. and the prosecution needs the jury to follow a chain of inference from beginning to end without a single link failing. And Ogilvy has found his weakest link. He puts Victor Ratton on the stand. And Ratton lives up to his expectation. He is, by every account, extraordinary. He speaks with the measured authority of a man who has spent decades making life and death decisions in operating theatres. And he turns that authority on Dr. Ferris's post-mortem with the quiet precision of a man who knows exactly what he's doing. He doesn't shout. He doesn't perform outrage. He simply explains in clear and careful terms what Dr. Ferris did not do. Chrissie Venn had fought her attacker. The evidence of struggle in the scrub, the disturbed ground, the blood, told the story plainly. A girl fighting for her life uses her hands, her nails, anything at her disposal. And if she did scratch the person who killed her, and the evidence strongly suggested she had, then there would be biological material beneath her fingernails. Skin, blood, something that could be matched to a suspect. But Dr. Ferris had not even checked. He had not collected samples. He hadn't looked. The most direct physical connection between the victim and her killer, the one piece of evidence that could have transformed this trial from a contest of competing inferences into something solid and certain, had simply never been gathered. It was gone. It would always be gone now. Ratton delivers this finding not as an attack, but as a statement of professional regret. He says, with the quiet weight of a man who has earned the right to say it, that had he been the examining doctor, he would have collected that material as a matter of standard practice, that even now he would support an application to exhume the body, and that there might, even at this late stage, be something useful beneath a fingernail, a blood type to be matched. The courtroom understands what he's saying. He's not suggesting Ferris is a bad man. He is saying Ferris is not at his standard. And then, with the prosecution already reeling, Ratton offers one more vital contribution. King's wife, Ruby, had supported him through the committal proceedings. And as such, the prosecution is keen to put her on the stand. Her testimony about her husband's movements, his explanations for the scratches, his state of mind in the days following the murder could be significant. But Ruby King is not in court. She's in the Hobart Hospital, suffering what is described as a complete nervous breakdown. Under whose care is she in that hospital, I hear you ask? Dr. Victor Ratton. Ratton testifies she's too ill to attend, whether that is a clinical judgment made in good conscience or a strategic one made in knowing service of his client. The effect is identical. Ruby King never gives evidence. And after 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returns a verdict of not guilty. Outside the court, the crowd gathered cheers for Ogilvy and his acquitted client. Inside, Ferris sits with the knowledge that his failure at the post-mortem has been laid out before the entire colony, and he was found wanting. King himself looks less like a man who has just been freed and more like a man who has survived something he will spend the rest of his life trying to put distance between himself and. The hero of the day is Victor Ratton, a man with fraudulent credentials whose medical opinion has just acquitted a man of murder, and whose convenient incapacitation of the key witness has gone unquestioned by everyone in the room. The real truth of what happened on Allison Road leaves the courtroom with the jury's verdict, unresolved, and takes up residence somewhere else entirely. King himself is a broken man, unable to pay his legal fees, unable to return to the community that has spent the better part of a year treating him as a murderer. He drifts from the story at this point. His later life remains to this day unclear. Rumours of a knife-sharpening job, a name in an electoral roll in Port Sorell, and a suggestion of a grave in Launceston. Nobody really knows. And back in North Motton, nobody bothers to look for any other culprit. The detective who led the investigation, so certain of King's guilt that he had not properly pursued other leads, is dismissed for incompetence. The coroner, who had altered his findings multiple times over the 6 months between the murder and the trial, is treated with something close to contempt. Key evidence is found to have been mishandled, not collected, not preserved, and future prosecution of any other suspect is made almost impossible before anyone has seriously considered who that other suspect might be. The case is closed, but certainly not solved. In the decades since the trial, a few fragments of the broader story have been examined more closely, and they suggest a world around Chrissie Venn's death that in 1921 investigators either chose not to explore or simply lacked the tools to understand. Chrissie's mother, Eva May, is a complicated figure in this story. She had been married to Chrissie's father, George Venn, in 1906, and he disappeared around 1908. And Eva's various official accounts of what happened to him are notably inconsistent. On one document, he died in 1902, which would have made him just 13 years old. On another, he drowned at sea, but the dates and locations shift. People who knew him personally claim to have seen him alive as late as 1917, and whether he simply left or something more troubling occurred, no one has ever fully established. What we do know is that by 1913, Eva had remarried to a man named Francis Henry Dawes. That marriage did not last in any functional sense. Eva left almost immediately after the wedding and went to live in the North Motton home of James Venn, a cousin of her first husband. She and Frank Dawes would not formally divorce until 1922, though by the time of Chrissie's murder, Eva was living with another man entirely. What makes all of this more unsettling in retrospect is a detail from 1919. Chrissie, aged 11, was examined by a doctor following an alleged rape. Someone in Eva's world had assaulted her daughter. Nobody was ever charged, and the perpetrator was never publicly identified. And when Chrissie was murdered just 2 years later, there is no evidence that this earlier assault was seriously explored as a line of inquiry. 2 days before Chrissie's murder, another death had touched the same community. Edith Venn, the wife of James Venn, at whose home Eva had once lodged, was found drowned at East Ulverston Beach. A note was found pinned inside her jacket, addressed to John Herbst, the neighbour on whose property the search for Chrissie's body would later be conducted. The note read, "Go to Jim. He's in trouble. Do what you can to comfort him, but I must go." The coroner recorded it as suicide, while temporarily insane. 2 women dead within 2 days. The same network of names, farms and roads. And a murder investigation that kept its gaze fixed on one man and never bothered to look around. Charles Purton, who claimed to have been ploughing his fields and to have seen Chrissie walking the road at 5 o'clock, was questioned at the trial by Ogilvy in ways that some found suggestive. Some of Charles's own descendants, according to accounts gathered in subsequent decades, believe he may have been involved in the murder. And in 1944, more than 20 years after Chrissie's death, Charles Purton disappeared. He was never seen again. None of this proves anything, of course, none of it names a killer, but what it does is sketch out a picture of a small, insular community carrying secrets that were either not asked about in 1921 or were asked about and quietly set aside. The investigation that fixated on George King may have been blind to a more complicated truth. Allison Road is still there. A quiet country road, the kind you wouldn't look at twice if you drove through it in the middle of a sunny afternoon. Farmland stretching out on either side. The stump where Chrissie Venn was found is long gone. But the stories haven't gone with it. And those stories tend to cluster around what the locals call the dip. One local story tells of a group of teenagers making the drive as part of a tradition that still exists today. The sort of thing country kids do when they're young enough to believe they might see something. The road is empty. The nearest streetlights are kilometres away, and inside the car there's laughter at first, perhaps a bit of nervous laughter, the kind that fills the silence when nobody wants to admit that they're becoming a bit more uneasy with each approaching kilometre. And then, as they enter the dip, the engine dies. Not gradually, not a cough or a splutter. Silence. All of a sudden they can hear the wheels rolling down the hill. The headlights start to dim. The dashboard begins to flicker. And suddenly, as the car stops, the only sound is the ticking of cooling metal and the wind whipping across the paddocks outside. None of the teenagers understandably want to get out. Nobody wants to be the first one to open a door and step into that darkness. But eventually, one of them does. The bonnet's lifted, torches on mobile phones come out, and they stand on the roadside pretending to diagnose a problem none of them understand, casting nervous glances toward the bush. And then, without warning, the car comes back to life, the radio bursting into sound. The electrical systems all begin behaving normally again. And the engine starts as though nothing had happened. At first, it's a wave of relief amongst the teenagers. And then comes the second part of this story. The headlights sweep across the desolate darkness, and they illuminate a figure standing ahead. A teenage girl, white dress, motionless. She's there just long enough for everyone in the vehicle to register what they're looking at, and then she's gone. Not running away, not stepping into trees, gone. This story spread because every person in the car supposedly saw the same thing. And years later, believers point to what happened afterward as further proof. The driver of the car reportedly suffered ongoing problems with that vehicle. Breakdowns that mechanics couldn't explain, faults that appeared and disappeared, long scratches along the bodywork that seemed to return after being removed. Whether that's evidence of anything supernatural depends on what you believe. It could easily be the imagination of 4 very frightened teenagers. It could also be the type of story that gets out of hand once it starts getting bandied around a small farming town. But what does matter is that the story never died, and it is far from the only one. The hitchhiker is the story that gets told the most, and it always starts the same way. It's late, later than you're meant to be out on the road. It's empty, and the high beams are doing that thing where they light the first 30 metres and turn everything past into a wall of darkness. You've gone through North Motton and out to the other side, into the part where the houses stop and the scrub leans in close, and you're not thinking about anything much except getting home. And then she's there, standing on the verge, right at the edge of the light. A girl. Young, maybe 14. She isn't waving you down, not exactly. She's just standing facing the road, the way a person stands when they've been waiting a long time and have stopped expecting anyone to come. Her dress is pale and not appropriate for the situation. It's too thin, too light. The sort of thing nobody would wear out here after dark in any decade you could name. You slow down without even thinking about it. You can't leave a kid on this road at this hour. She gets in the back, You hear the door, you feel the seat give the small shift of weight behind you in the car, and you ask her where she's headed. It's an address that's slightly off, a name for a place that nobody has used in 70 years. You glance at the mirror to say something more, to clarify the address, to find out why she's out here at such an hour. But the back seat is empty. She hasn't gone quiet, she's not lying down out of view. It's empty. The door is still shut. And the road behind you is completely empty. There is no one on it. No one standing beside it. The scrub is only a couple of feet tall. There's nowhere to hide. And you keep driving. Because what else is there to do? And you don't slow down again until you are well clear of the dip. For a long time afterward, you find you cannot quite describe the look on her face. And you're not even sure that you ever really saw it. This is, of course, a story told all over the world. Every country seems to have its phantom hitchhiker. But on Allison Road, this legend has attached itself to a very real horror. A 13-year-old girl who vanished on this same stretch of road. A girl whose body was found hidden nearby. A girl whose killer was never brought to justice. And that's perhaps why the stories endure. Not because people are certain that they're true, but because they feel connected to something that is unfinished. The road has become a repository for memory, a place where history, folklore, and tragedy have fused together so completely that separating one from the other is almost impossible. The road remembers. Or at least that's what people around North Motton have been saying for more than a century. Standing on Allison Road in the daylight is genuinely peaceful. It's the kind of countryside that you would see on the side of some sort of butter packaging. Beautiful country. You wouldn't know that anything terrible has happened here at all. But I keep coming back to a detail from the inquest. It's the Herbst boys working in their father's field. They hear a single scream from the valley below, and they waited. And when no second scream came, they went back to their work. They went back to their work. In 1921, on a quiet country road, the sound of a girl screaming once was not quite enough to make them stop what they were doing. I can't help but feel that says something about the world that Chrissie Venn lived in, and perhaps something about the world that failed to find justice for her after she died. And that is the most important point to remember in this story above all else. Chrissie Venn has not received any justice whatsoever. Researchers over the years have dug up several intriguing leads that could have led to the real murderer. And instead, there's just a road that won't let people forget her, and a story that's been passed from generation to generation, in the dark, specific way that rural communities preserve things that they're not quite ready to let go of. Truth. Thanks again for listening to another episode of Struth. I hope you like this one, a combination of true crime and a bit of spooky thrown in for good measure. If you'd like to follow us on social media to keep abreast of everything that's going on, there's links in the description below, Facebook, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. And if you want more Struth, remember we have Struth Premium, which is available. on Patreon, and also hopefully in the very near future on Apple's subscription as well. I'm not quite sure whether I'm going to have that sorted by the time you hear this episode, but I'll certainly put updates on the social media platforms about that. Cheers.